There she is. We see you.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
You can
Perfect.
see me? Okay, awesome.
You. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Sorry about the technical complications.
No worries at all. So welcome officially, Stacyann, to our January Ask the Expert webinar. As most of you in the audience likely know, this is a monthly panel webinar that we host with Colorado CU Boulder, Colorado State University, and then CU Anschutz, really working on bringing resources, bringing network connections to researchers sitting at our universities who are interested in commercializing their technology, that is bringing their technology out of the lab and into the market. We're so fortunate to have Stacyann here. Stacyann, I'll let you introduce yourself in just a second. But Stacyann, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, wears many different hats, working with researchers, supporting university technology. So let's start there, Stacyann. Can you let us know some of the roles you play and who you are, and really how you got into this space of working with university researchers?
Absolutely. Thank you, Emily, for having me. Super excited to talk to everyone today. I am Stacyann Russell, and I have the privilege of serving as the director for the I-Core Hub West region for the National Science Foundation. As Emily mentioned, we deliver a program to help researchers translate what they're working on in the lab into the marketplace. So if you have a problem that you're working on and you're like, this could be a solution for people, we could turn it into a product and build a business. We essentially deliver programming all across California, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico to make sure that you're prepared to understand what that means for you and your technology, as well as we put massive resources behind you to make sure that you can sustain the journey from the lab to the marketplace. That is one of the exciting things that I get to do in my role as an I-Core Hub director. I also work to launch and scale tech startups across the United States and Canada through running accelerator programs. And I'm a national I-Core instructor. So I know exactly what you're going to go through in the National I-Core program because I'm the one that put you through it. So I have the luxury of teaching cohorts, and I do that for not just the NSF, but I also do that for the Department of Energy as well. And I do that in the I-Core program, which is mainly for academics, but I also do that on the SBIR side, which stands for the Small Business Innovation Research grant for those people who already have established companies and are also looking to translate deep technologies into the marketplace, where there's another set of funding from the agencies, whether it's NSF, NIH, etc.
Perfect. Perfect. And, just so we can get to know you better, a little bit more about your background, how did you come into all of this? I think we're really fortunate to have folks like you supporting our researchers that have deep technical knowledge and acumen, as well as the business knowledge and the resources or connections to kind of put everything together. So can you tell us a little bit more how you stepped into this role with the NSF, with our universities?
Yeah, well, I was a young lad. No, I'm just playing. So I'm an engineer myself, right? So started off in nuclear engineering. I've worked in 3D immersive environments. I've worked in modeling and simulation radars, both in this atmosphere and in space. And so from the product development and the technical side, I really had an opportunity to understand what it takes to make complex systems, right? That's just kind of my jam. But I also realized in industry that that wasn't the entire picture, right? There was a business side to it. And so I was always super curious as to how do we even determine which products to make? And when we create those products, like how do we know what the requirements are? right? Like what makes that product so good that people will buy them, um, and that it keeps people employed, because people are buying enough of them. So I think I always had that curiosity, and that would eventually lead me to get my MBA. And while I was getting my MBA at USC, I got introduced into the I-Corps program. I actually started off as a teaching assistant, believe it or not, in the I-Corps program while I was a grad student. Went on into consulting for a big four firm and worked on manufacturing innovation and got some more experience there while being a national I-Corps instructor. And I just absolutely fell in love with the concept of if we solve a really dope problem through technology, that we can not just create a solution, which is what I was used to doing as an engineer, like here's just a solution, but we can build a business and we can like create an economy and we can create jobs just by solving the right problem in the right way.
That's awesome. That really resonates with me as well. Being able to bring fundamental research, fundamental technologies out into market has direct impact on the technology itself, accessing new markets, reaching more and more people, and also kind of this economic success. I know there's a lot of us in Colorado that really care about, bringing good companies into our state, keeping good employees in our state, growing good companies here. And I think resources that the universities have, resources that I-Corps provides really helps us do that. So I love the impact angle. So Stacyann, I'd love to dive a little bit more into I-Corps, given we've already referenced it so much. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of I-Corps, who created this, why it's called I-Corps, if you know, because I don't. Who uses this programming, and then we can dive a little bit more into how to tap into this resource for anybody who might be on the call.
Absolutely. So I-Corps actually stands for Innovation Core. That's why we call it I-Corps. And what this was really born out of is the National Science Foundation. I think they fund something like in the upwards of 95% of academic research that happens in the US. And so at one point they were spending 7.9 billion with a billion dollars supporting research at our academic institutions. And it was great. We were learning things, we were solving problems, people were getting their masters and their PhDs, we were building labs. But then that research was just kind of staying there. It was just like, yay, I got my PhD. Peace out. Maybe I'll become a professor, maybe I'll get a corporate job, but that was the extent that it went. And so the question became, if we're going to put billions of dollars into this anyway, how can we get a return for the taxpayers that are essentially paying for this, right? And it was like, okay, we want to make sure that the research that we're funding has an economic and a societal impact by the way that we're solving the right problems, as well as we're creating jobs in the process. And just extending the reach of the financial impact that we were making as NSF. And so that's where Innovation Core came from, or I-Corps came from. As you know, there is a SBIR program, again, Small Business Innovation Research Grant, where the NSF was already awarding anywhere from 275,000 to $1 million so that people can work on product development. But one of the things were, if you create this product, there was a missing gap of how do we actually get it to market. And Emily, I think working in the program, and I know being an engineer myself, I can do really well on what the product should do. Now, getting it to a point or communicating it to a point where people will buy it is a totally different skill set. And while you don't need to be a marketing genius in order to do that, there is some value to knowing as a technologist where the value lies in your product. And so they created this program to say, hey, if you really are looking at starting a business from the research that you're doing in the lab, we need to make sure that you're prepared for that, right? Like we don't expect you to just come out of the lab knowing that. And so we developed this program based around customer discovery that says, while I'm still in the lab, I am going to go out into the marketplace, listen to customers, and understand the value that they are willing to pay for. And I'm going to build that into the product. And I'm going to do it in a way that they can receive it and access it, and they just have to have it. And so then you start to see different things come out of NSF, like the Cisco's and things of that nature, that really have an impact in the marketplace. So I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. What I love about I-Corps is how it really meets our researchers at an early phase, and it's something that they can integrate, you know, when you're still at this fundamental research stage, and a thought process, a perspective, whether it is leading a venture, taking a backseat role, kind of a scientific advisory role in a venture, building a small business, or continuing to win further commercialization funding. These SBIR grants are a really great example. I think for researchers that we've chatted with who have completed the programming, there's a perspective shift that they can bring back many times into their labs, into their projects, into their students and the success of those students. So I'm biased, but I'm a fan. Can you get a little bit more into what the I-Corps programs look like, what you focus on? I can provide the Colorado perspective. You can provide maybe more of a regional perspective. We partner with CU Anschutz as well. I know you're less familiar with the NIH, but CU Anschutz runs NIH funded I-Corps program. So kind of some opportunities, what's covered in these programs? How long does it take? How do you get involved? What's the pathway?
Awesome. So for the I-Corps program, we essentially teach customer discovery, and we have teams explore what their customer base value again. So we're not really sending teams out there to say, oh, will you buy my technology, right? Or is my technology relevant? What we're actually doing is preparing them to hold conversations with people in the market to understand what their problem is. So we have a hypothesis of what the problem is in the lab, and we're testing against that. But there is some experimentation, if you will, that needs to be done in the marketplace as well. And we take that same scientific method and we do it through the customer discovery process. So we think that a person needs this technology for this reason. We create hypotheses around that, and then we conduct interviews in the marketplace to test our assumptions. And we test it so many times so that we can start to find trends and really understand where the value is for the problem that our customer is trying to solve. So we literally take the scientific method and we just apply it into the marketplace. Now, the way that we do that is it's a tiered process. So for us as a hub, we run regional programming, which means that you can come to the I-Corps Hub West or any one of our member institutions. We have 9 of them across 4 states, and say, hey, I have an idea. I think that I want to build a business from it. And so I want to go down this path to see if my idea is relevant for the market. For the hub, we have a 3-week course. It's just 2 hours once a week for 3 weeks, so 6 hours in total, where we teach you the customer discovery process, and we introduce you to a tool that most entrepreneurs use, technical or not, called the business model canvas. And what that does is that helps you create hypotheses and answers the questions of, do I have the right customer? Do I understand what that customer values? How do they want to receive information about the product or the product itself? Do I have the right channels to deliver this product in a way that they are willing to pay for? So we walk you through that process of getting some ideas around that and what your business model could be, and help you with the process of testing that in the marketplace before you start building anything out and I don't want to say wasting, but maybe using your lab funding, creating features that may not be as relevant to the customer right now. So you do that for 3 weeks. After that, an instructor will sit, kind of evaluate whether your technology is deep enough, so novel enough for the National I-Corps program. But the great thing is, let's say, Emily, that it's like, okay, this is great, but this is more so of an app. So it's not really like a deep technology. Um, then we'll have resources for you there too. If you are looking at something novel in the lab, we're going to now start preparing you for the national program. So we'll go a little bit deeper into the business model canvas for another 2 weeks. So one session over the next 2 weeks. You'll conduct more customer interviews, and then we'll start to prepare you for the national interview that you will have with the National Science Foundation. Once you get the stamp of approval from our hub, then that is when you're invited to participate in the national program. And should you interview well there and get accepted, they give you $50,000 to have 100 customer interviews over 7 weeks. And that's what we like to see, right? So we are putting people through this regional program to prep them from the national program. And guess what? Once you complete that national program, you're in a much better position to either move forward with the technology that you have, go back into the lab and make some changes, or decide to pursue an iteration of the problem that you are already solving.
That's great. Yeah, I think the strength of the program is a strength that any startup founder, venture leader has, which is the ability to pivot. As we know, with testing hypotheses, if they're wrong, if there's a failure, that's a great thing because you're not going to waste any more time and resources running down that. We have a question in the chat from Tyler talking about a program that I believe he's referring to the NIH funded program at our medical campus, which is CU Anschutz, that co-hosts this event. And how that ties in. So can you talk a little bit more about how the NSF works with other departments, groups like the NIH, and then I'll plug how he might be able to get involved in our hub as well.
Absolutely. So, I believe that NSF was the first agency to do the I-Corps program. And when you see programs from NIH, DOE, or NASA, right? Like it's the evolution of that. The good thing is, if you participate in one of their programs, that does not preclude you from being able to participate with the NSF program, because they're different agencies. They have a different application process, different acceptance process, and different funding.
Perfect. Tyler, to look at your company, Ease of Life, a little bit more, let's chat offline as well. I just dropped my email in the chat. But the great thing is a lot of these agencies are using this essentially as a grant de-risker, seeing the actual viable commercial potential of some of the research that they're funding. So you started to hit on this, and I think it's worth diving a little bit more into. For the National I-Corps program, you need a novel technology. Can you tell us briefly what else teams might be looking for in order to get up to that level of working directly with the NSF?
Yes, absolutely. So the first things first, you do have to go through some sort of regional programming or have some type of lineage from the National Science Foundation. Because we changed to the hub structure at the beginning of last year, essentially most teams will have to come through a hub. So first step is to get with either an institution, to get with Emily. There we go. That is your first step to get with Emily, so that you can get some regional training and essentially get the stamp of approval from our hub to say, like, yes, we are sponsoring you to the National I-Corps program. Now, what does that mean? You would have had to conduct customer discovery interviews prior to going to the National I-Corps program, so that you can have an understanding of the customer segment that you would want to explore at the national level. So conducting customer interviews at the regional programming. You're also going to need to have a team. So our I-Core teams usually consist of at least 3 people. Those roles are the entrepreneurial lead, which is typically a grad student or a postdoc. That is a leader. That serves as a leader of the team, and they're going to be doing the readouts every week on behalf of the team, telling us what you learned in your customer interviews, if there are any pivots, who you're speaking to in that case. So that's the first one, entrepreneurial lead. You have the technical lead, which can also be a postdoc or a faculty member that is in the lab, right? And they really have an understanding of how the technology works, and the ways in which if a customer say, I value this, how that translate into features for the technology. And then finally, it's an industry mentor. And that person is really someone, preferably in the industry that you are looking to participate in, that can help connect you with other individuals in that ecosystem so you can test your assumptions during the program. So we talked about doing customer interviews prior to there. We also talked about having a team ready to go. You have to have a deep enough technology. And this is like the $1 million question, Emily. What is deep enough? And so what we like to say is it has to be novel technology. But the first question, and maybe like an easier way to figure out what's deep enough, is have you published papers on this, right? Is this patentable? It doesn't have to be patented, but is it patentable? I think that's another way to answer. Is it deep enough? And is the IP at an academic institution? This is super important. I know a lot of times that there are relationships between universities and companies, but for the I-Core program itself, the IP has to be at the institution or can be used by the institution. So that is what you need. And then we wouldn't want you to have too much funding. So typically that threshold is you can't have more than $1 million. I would say we would love to have a conversation with you, but the reality is if you can raise $1 million already, is this the right program for you, or should you be participating in something that's a little more mature? We'll be able to answer that question. The greatest thing you can do for your technology and your team, though, is to see Emily, because there are nuances. So I gave you 4 criteria, but there are a lot of nuances in between. And so if you think you have an idea, the best thing you could do is get in front of one of our members so that you can see if you're a fit for the program.
That's great. That's super helpful. And again, we have this opportunity. CU Boulder and Colorado State partnered together within this hub with the NSF. We also have teams from CU Anschutz join us in the NSF programming. We support through Kathy Bowden on the CU Anschutz campus, who co-hosts this webinar. She supports with the NIH version of this program. And we're really pathfinders. We can help you kind of find the best path, best opportunities for you. We have a question from Russell in the chat around SBIR funding. So Stacyann, can you talk a little bit more about how I-Core and SBIR fit together, kind of some synergies there?
I love this.
Any information on SBIR?
Yes, we're actually, fun fact, we're actually in a hub meeting right now where we talked about like providing some communication around this very relationship. So I-Core was created to help SBIR grant applicants, okay? So if you are a faculty member and you're like, I wanna go after that phase 1 or I wanna go after that phase 2, part of the application is how are you going to commercialize your technology? As you know or may not know, the SBIR grant are for established companies and established companies, their goal is to, and when I say established companies, I mean like you actually have, you're a formed entity in whatever state that you're in. You need to get a product to market. And what the NSF found out was that, hey, people know their technology very well. They don't know how to answer the question of how I'm going to get it to market very well. So that's why they created the iCore program, to give people the opportunity to answer that question of what is my path to commercialization, and how big do I think that path, that market is, should I be able to get to market. And so that is the relationship. I don't have the most current number, but I can say that their SBIR applicants that have done the iCore program has a higher acceptance rate than SBIR applicants that did not. But I don't have the most current number on that.
Yeah, that's great. And it's good to know kind of the reasons behind this programming. Russell, we can talk a little bit more offline about your second question in the chat. But for everybody else, iCore does not cost anything. You do not have to give up any part of your company. You do not have to pay for the programming. It's part of our university resources. And at least in the beginning stages, it's pretty wide open to a wide variety of people. So again, I'm a Pathfinder. Stacyann's a Pathfinder in this space. Please reach out to us. I drop my email if you have any more questions about getting engaged, or if you qualify or not. Russell's last question was, do you mentor or advise? I know, she's fantastic. She's great.
I do mentor and advise in my other endeavors. But I will say this, like, again, we have 9 universities in our hub, and we have a plethora of resources. I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat. Absolutely. I do mentor. I run programs. I am so committed to people who have ideas, preferably technical, because I am an engineer, right? But I am so committed to people who have ideas, having the access and ability to test those ideas so that they can do something different. That's literally what I've pivoted my career to be, starting as a nuclear engineer to where I am today. So absolutely.
That's awesome, Stacyann. So I'd like to zoom out from iCore a little bit and talk more about kind of our end goal here, which is bringing new ventures, new technologies, new business opportunities to market. In your engineering background, with the countless teams that you've worked with over the years with the NSF, et cetera, what kind of challenges and opportunities do you see with deep tech startups or university-based startups? And you can take that in whatever direction you wish.
Yeah, I think that this is great. How much time do we have? No, just playing. So first things first is, I think that this is a different approach, right? So when we talk about bringing products to market, it's less about how far technically I can get and more about meeting the customer's needs. So I think some of the challenges that we find with deep tech coming to market is that we are naturally invested in answering the scientific question. But when you're bringing something to market, you also have to answer, if not more so, what is the customer need? And sometimes that can be very challenging for those of us that are interested in reaching scientific goals. So I would say just that change in perspective can be very challenging when it comes to deep technologies. The other thing is that deep technologies take a longer horizon to see your return on investment. So I know, I get this. Emily, I'm sure you get this, right? It's like, oh, I got this technology in the lab. I'm ready. Take me to your VC investor because they're going to invest with me. I got the next hottest thing ever. And it's like, okay, everybody slow down. We get it. Right? But there are certain types of funding for products and companies that are in certain stages. And for deep technologies, the horizon can be really long and much longer than what a VC fund is looking to invest in for you to show proof that there is a market that exists and that that market is big enough to sustain your business model. And so why things like America's Seed Fund, which houses the SBIR grant, and NSF and all these agencies are doing the I-Corps program is because the US government is trying to like fill the gap between when other players in the ecosystem, be it angel investors, VC investors, whoever who really invest in later stage companies, they're trying to fill your funding gap so that you can still explore the problem in an intellectually honest way while you're making it to market. So that's probably, I would say those two things are the two of the biggest challenges when it comes to deep technologies. Oh, and I will say this though, as an engineer, I do this myself. We're just not curious enough sometimes. Like we are so bent on like doing what we're doing in the lab that we don't embrace the opportunity to challenge our assumptions in a safe place, right? And so I think that um, we're so used to running the scientific method in a certain way that doing it from a customer's perspective or designing a specific experiment for that sometimes get lost. But, you know, nothing too crazy.
No, it's such a great overview. I think the long path to market, especially, I think more and more I've seen venture capitalists or private money looking to get into deep tech or hardware, kind of fundamental technology-based companies. I think especially, dare I say, as our kind of software bubble has come back down to earth a little bit, I think for all of you, Russell's patented system, Deanna's health applications, being able to tell that impact story, leverage all of the public funding available, and sell into many different industries. You're in many cases, deep tech companies are not reliant on a consumer base. They're selling into industry that will always be around. Think aerospace, think energy. So I think private investors and private capital is seeing that more and more. So if we, sitting in the university side, sitting as the Pathfinder side, can kind of help close these gaps in the early stage, I think there are just so many opportunities for these technologies to flourish, which is why I love that I do what I do.
Yeah, there really are a lot of opportunities. And I think what's super interesting, I like to use this example a lot for my non-technical folks. But think about blockchain before it was applied anywhere, right? That's where your technology is in the lab, right? We know the story now, like blockchain can be applied to the financial industry, cryptocurrency, or blockchain can be in agriculture, right? Blockchain can be in a lot of different places. Well, where you're at is where blockchain was when it was like, hey, I got this thing that can store data and secure it, and it can attach to another block of data and secure it, and you'll never be able to change it. That's where we're working with technologies. And so if you really do take this time to look at your research in a very like beginner's mindset way, the possibilities are truly endless as far as what you can do. And we just want to, Emily and myself, just want to create and foster an environment that allows you to do that in a way that is safe, where you don't have to give up any equity to your company, where you're not like eating pizza on a couch. I don't know why that narrative for entrepreneurs became like the like rite of passage, but I don't think Emily nor I are advocating for that type of life. So it's like, how might you be able to do that while you're still in the lab, and just figure out, you want to choose where you want to go, not have to go somewhere.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, more opportunities out of academia too is exciting. I think a lot of our PhD students, postdocs. This opens doors, be it with corporations, be it with their own venture, which I think is exciting. On this realm of why we're so passionate about doing this, Stacyann, one of my favorite my favorite parts of working with you is the focus and the energy and the time that you put towards pulling more people into this world. When we chat through programming that we provide with I-Corps, with the NSF, we are both beholden to and driven by an onus to diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of across the board here. So can you talk a little bit more about how you think of this space from this inclusivity perspective, from getting more researchers involved in commercialization and some outcomes or opportunities from that?
Absolutely. So DEI is something that the West Hub, we're not only big on, we tend to, set the standard around, and we think of diversity across 4 different aspects. Diversity of people, diversity of geography, diversity of technology, and diversity of industry. And so what that means is when we look at the ecosystems that we're involved in, when we have instructors, when we send teams, does that look like the people that the communities that we represent? And how might we make sure that it is an accurate reflection? When we look at the geographies, if we are in California or Southern California, how do we make sure we're not just in LA or San Diego? How do we make sure that we really are reaching out and impacting where the best research is happening, irrespective of what city you're in and the type of institution? One thing we haven't talked about, Emily, is the fact that we set money aside for individuals that may not have like a traditional R1 a research one institution. If you have a technology, or you have a friend or know a friend of a friend, a faculty member that's working on a technology, we have pathways to make sure that they get into the National I-Corps program, even if it means I got to pay for it myself. So that $50,000, even if I have to pay for it myself, like I will, because I just want the best technology out there, right? When we talk about diversity of technology, how do we make sure that we're not just playing in the same areas when it comes to our research that we're conducting, but are we reaching out across the different industries and across the different type of technologies to make sure that we are solving the problems that matter, particularly across our region? And how might we do it in a way that we can set the standard across the nation? And Emily hears me say this all the time, like, we just set the bar, and that's what we try to do here in the West. And that's how we look at that. We're creative in our approach. We think outside the box. And I love the way, Emily, that you put this. We are pathfinders. So I love a good challenge to solve.
That's great. I think, again, moving back to the previous point I had made when we were talking about kind of opportunities that this creates especially for students, I think the overall perspective shift, being able to write grants differently, being able to take a position at a startup or spin out a startup yourself. I think especially for research students, PhDs and postdocs, there's so many opportunity, and the more kind of, diversity of people, diversity of universities. We're not limited to the universities that are in our hub with people that we get to work with. So, yeah, there's just so many opportunities with any of this programming that we're trying to steward and bring more people in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to make sure that if anybody out there is dying to ask a question, has anything on their mind, I want to make sure that you all get the opportunity to ask that, whether it's about I-Corps, whether it's about the commercialization process, or building a startup, or building a company. Stacyann is a fantastic resource. with that, Stacyann, do you have any advice for university researchers? I don't know exactly who's in the audience, but I'm guessing there are some folks early on into their academic journey. There are some folks that sit as faculty members. Do you have any advice for any of these groups?
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of times what we hear is that, listen, I would love to do this program, Emily, but I got to work on this thing called tenure. Okay. So I need to focus all my efforts and energy on that. And I can definitely appreciate that sentiment as well. We've had faculty members that have done it across all different stages of their career. And what I will say is that if you're going to invest the time and energy into solving a research problem, you should think about commercialization, right? I mean, the reason why we are pursuing these research problems to begin with is to solve a question that someone wants to know the answer to. The challenge that we have sometimes as scientists is getting it to the masses. This is an opportunity for you to get that answer to the masses for people who don't even know that they have that question. So if you come to Emily or myself or any of the other partners, we'll be able to help you understand like what is the best team makeup so that you can still focus on your lab and you can still focus on tenure and you can still focus on the things that you may need to do. The other thing is we literally see faculty members who have increased their grant acceptance because they have taken the approach that they learned in I-Corps, which is customer discovery, and applied it to the way that they go about their research funding. And that is because they answer better questions, hands down. And so that's what this process is. So if you're interested in literally just answering better questions and making sure that your research reaches further than the four walls in your lab, then definitely get into the program.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit more, because you know a little bit more of the inner workings around SBIR, around the NSF. So without kind of taking the leap all the way into let's spin out a startup, how can researchers, PIs, grant writers set themselves up for more success with the readers of these grants? What are they really looking for, be it an SBIR, be it a Partnership for Innovation grant, research grant?
Yeah, number one thing is, are you pursuing something that is truly relevant? Right? There's only but a limited amount of money, right? And we can see even now with the way that the market is going, the market is extremely unpredictable. We're in a recession. Are we not in a recession? How deep is the recession? Who knows, right? It changes. It seems to change with every quarter. So your ability to clearly articulate the problem that you're solving, why you are solving it, and how it matters in a more broader impact sense or global impact. I think that's like on every application, right? What is the broader impact of your technology? And so, at least when it comes to these funding opportunities, it's not good enough just to solve a problem that we want to know the answer to. We really need to understand that this is going to have an impact to the way that people are living their lives today, and that impact is sustainable. And so that's what grant writers should be focused on. And while you absolutely have to have the technical aspects of that down, that broader impact really is some of the reasons why people don't get that phase two, or don't even initially get that phase one. And they could have hit like every single metric that they were trying to hit in that project. And it's like, great. But we got to have that broader impact.
Yeah, that's great. And that's why I love doing what we're doing. That's great. Maybe to wrap us up, again, if anybody has a question for Stacyann, please feel free to leave something in the chat. request for contact info. Stacyann, I think you said you were going to drop your LinkedIn information. You can find us at our respective universities as well. I dropped my email in the chat. But maybe to wrap us up, if no one else has questions, and I'll give you all a couple more minutes to ask them. Stacyann, I would love to know if you have any good either recent successes or recent failures, which we like failure in this world, from any of your national cohorts that you've taught lately.
Oh man, I think one of the most profound teams that well, actually, now that I think about it, it's a couple. Well, we do have a team that came out of our own hub and node that's called Gray Matter Robotics. They went through the I-Core program, I want to say a couple of years ago. And all I know now is they have like an office set up in Los Angeles. They have received, I want to say they've done their Series A already. I don't want to quote the number. I just know it has a millions behind it. But they are pretty much they started as an academic team. They're a full-fledged company out here in Los Angeles now. But the other team that I was going to bring up was a team that we actually saw in the academic program, and then we saw them as an SBIR company. So customer discovery is so important to the National Science Foundation that they actually have opportunities for the SBIR companies to do it as well. And for this team, they along their path, they've done academic one, they got a phase one, they did I-Core again. And I think they did, in preparation for their phase two, they did I-Core 3 times. So remember, I told you the national program is 100 customer interviews in 7 weeks. They ended up doing, by the time I saw them, 345 customer interviews. And I think it was at interview 280 that once they realized the technology that they were going to go to market with, that there was this huge regulatory block. And they did not get there until interview 280. And they were like, we would have lost so much time and so much money had we not kept going back and learning and understanding and revisiting and going back to the lab. And so I'm just super proud of them for sticking to it. There's so many people that just like to throw things to the wall and see if they stick, but they really stuck with the program throughout their different phases of funding. And they are able to just recoup time and money and avoid potential losses because they're committed to the customer discovery program.
That's great. It's such a good lesson. We say the same here. It's something that you'll do early and often. I think especially with deep tech startups that will take 5 years to build a product to get to market. We're at a disadvantage. We can't iterate in the same way that an app developer, a startup developer, or a software developer can use. The fail fast trope in startups is much more difficult if you have millions of dollars and thousands of hours behind a technology. So our way of iterating, how I like to think of it, is iterating through these conversations. If I can't lower the fundamental technical risk of this product, of this company, how do I lower market risk? So when I get there technically, it's a sure thing. I know who's selling. I know they're going to pay me multi-million-dollar contracts. I know the industry is reliable because I'm selling into industry. I'm not trying to win consumer appetite. So being able to get that market risk kind of locked in, understood, is really why this is a starting point for us. One of our favorite I-Core stories off of the CU Boulder campus is a couple of researchers that went through the national program. Remember, the national program is 100 interviews. We're working with mycelium, the root structure of mushrooms, to understand many different properties. I think they went through 10, 15 iterations. What could we potentially use this for? Before finally landing on something probably 180 degrees from their original use case, which is a plant-based meat substitute that you can see in stores now, is manufactured in Colorado, big manufacturing plant. And to be able to land on that through iCore, find the market for their technology was a really exciting story and a successful one after many failures.
Absolutely. And can I just take a moment? I know we're almost at time, but I would just like to take a moment to shout out you, Emily, and your team over there in Colorado. You all are amazing. You set the standard nationally, literally. I'm not just bragging because you're our partner, but the programs that you have there are phenomenal. Y'all are in great hands, truly. Over there in Colorado. I even came in the snow. Okay. We are talking about from Los Angeles. I left the sun for the snow just to see your teams. I love coming there. I will be there next month. At Destination Startup and just everything that you all are doing in Colorado, it really makes my job easy and it makes my job bragging nationally so much more fun for the petty side of me. So I just want to thank you and give you kudos to your team because you are really helping teams not just embrace the program, but literally start economies there in Colorado. So shout out to you all.
Well, thanks so much for saying that, Stacyann. And for anyone on the call, you heard it from Stacyann. No, we would love to see you all. We're able to work with, technologies across industry. We work with all the major universities and even some smaller ones in Colorado. So wherever you sit, I'd love to have a conversation about how to get you engaged. If iCore is not the right fit, we live in a fantastic startup community, really great research resources. So let us be your pathfinders. Please feel free to reach out. With that, Stacyann, thank you so much for joining us, albeit virtually. I'm glad you'll be out here next month. We'll try to ward off the snow. But thank you all. Thank you, Stacyann. And hopefully we will see you all at an iCore event soon.
All right. Thank you, Emily. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Have a good day, everybody.
All right. Bye.